Hi everyone, my name is Samantha Marcino and I'm the Crops Extension Specialist of the Yorkton office. Today we're at the Crop Diagnostic School and Nicole and I are working on the weed station. So just to run through a couple of weeds here, the first one we have here is lamb's quarters. You can tell by the mealy white on the leaves that rubs off. Next up is everyone's favorite kochia, which is a nice fuzzy plant that we all get to see out in the fields. This one here is redroot pigweed. It does have fine hairs on it and a red stem as distinguishing features. Next up is prostrate pigweed. Can be distinguished from redroot as it grows along the ground. It doesn't grow upright and it has much smaller leaves. Moving on to this one normally grows upright in the field, but this is cow cockle. So it'll have pink flowers. And its little flowers have 5 ribs on them generally, the flower pockets. The leaves are opposite and much more narrow than other cockles. So next up we have white cockle, night flowering catchfly, and bluebird. They can all be fairly similar. White cockle can be a little sticky when it's small, but as it grows it gets less sticky. Night flowering catchfly gets very, very sticky as it grows up, but they both have kind of whitish flowers and can both be very similar as they get older. Bluebird, also similar, but a much rounder shaped leaf and much different flowers and a much different plant. As you can see them here together, it's easy to distinguish, but sometimes out in the field they can look quite similar. The next one here is cornsberry, sometimes confused with Russian thistle, but this one grows in whorls, as you can see up the stem here. So that's one distinguishing feature of cornsberry. Next up is portulaca or purslane, a very common weed in people's gardens and yards, but can also be a field weed as well. Moving on to our thistles, we've got 4 different kinds of thistles and they can all be very much confused. So this one here is called spiny annual sow thistle. This one is just straight annual sow thistle. This one is prickly lettuce, and this one here is perennial sow thistle. So the distinguishing features on these ones, for the most part, spiny annual, this maybe isn't the best specimen. You know, we grew it inside. They grow better in their actual native habitat in the soil. But it's generally a denser plant, really tough leaves, and the flowers grow very close to the plant. They don't shoot up very far, and a very small round flower. This is the annual, just plain annual. You can tell the leaves are very, very different. They're incredibly deeply lobed, and they'll usually end in either a circular kind of a triangle shape on the end. Again, much smaller flowers than the perennial sow thistle as another distinguishing feature. Prickly lettuce, probably the easiest way to tell this one apart from the other ones is if you look on the back of the leaf, on the midrib there's little spines as you go down. So there'll be prickles and they become more pronounced as the plant gets older and bigger. Perennial, one easier way, most of the time perennial is connected by an underground horizontal root. So if there's a bunch of thistles growing in a patch, if you dig them up and they're all connected by a horizontal root, chances are it's a perennial thistle. They can also grow from seed, so it's not all the time, but most of the time. Another distinguishing feature is that it'll shoot a flower up and it's a nice big yellow flower and it gets quite tall. This one's very pretty, but a very big nuisance out in the field. It's called wild buckwheat. And then next we have shepherd's purse, which can sometimes get confused with stinkweed, but the seed pods on this are always a nice heart shape and stinkweed is always a round shape.
Hey, I'm Nicole Montreal. I'm the Crops Extension Specialist out of the Outlook office. So we're at the weed station at CDS. This right here is pineapple weed. It's similar to scentless chamomile when it's smaller. The biggest difference is when you crush these leaves, it smells like pineapple, and scentless chamomile has no scent at all. It also has this yellow and green head. This right here, this little one, is Flickswede. It, when it's a bit more mature, has like a grayish green color and it almost looks fuzzy. That is how you would distinguish it from a smaller pineapple weed. And this one is just a little bonus weed and it is chickweed. Here we have American dragonhead. It is commonly confused with hemp nettle and henbit, but American dragonhead has pointed leaves and the very tip of it is also a point, and it has blue or white flowers. So it's coarsely toothed. and the leaf underside can be hairy and the top will be smooth. And hemp nettle, when you touch it, it will like sting you kind of, and henbit is more like round leaves. So these two are mustards that can get commonly confused. This is a ball mustard, and the leaf is very smooth looking and you can barely see the veination in it, where this is a wild mustard, and they're both hairy, but this one has more hairs on the stems, and the leaves are very, like the veins are very prominent. Right here we have round-leafed mallow. So you can see that the leaves on these are round. When they are smaller, they're often confused with wild buckwheat, which you would have saw before, and field bindweed. And the field bindweed has more square looking cotyledons, are blocky, whereas the wild buckwheat you saw has that arrow shaped leaves. And this one has more of a heart shaped cotyledon, and you can see some of those down here. Now we'll go through our grassy weeds. So this here is green foxtail. It is a smaller, it normally would be a lot bigger. The way you can ID it from other plants is its ligule is a fringe of hair, and its sheath margins will also be trimmed with hair. This here is barnyard grass. It is commonly confused with quackgrass. Barnyard grass will have an open sheath and it has no ligule and no auricle, whereas quackgrass has clasping auricles and a very small membranous ligule. And then here we have Japanese brome. It has a membranous ligule, but it's very blunt and it has no auricles. It has very hairy leaves, and it is commonly confused with downy brome that also has very hairy leaves. They both have red purple coloring, and it also has a membranous ligule, but this ligule is pointed and it has no auricles, and neither does Japanese brome. All right, this is the weed station. We highly encourage everyone to come out and participate in person so you can get an up-close look at the weeds, and we can help you with some key identifying features.